Welcome. This is James Corbett with the latest edition of the Global Research feature interview series from Global Research TV at grtv.ca. And I'd like to remind all of the listeners and viewers out there that this is a podcast and vodcast in both audio and video form. And links to subscribe to both of those podcasts will be available in the video description bar, both on the YouTube channel and also on grtv.ca. And this week, we're honored to be joined on the line by Mahdi Nazemroaya, a research associate with the Global Center for Research on Globalization, and someone who has been spending the last few months in Libya and has witnessed all of the carnage that's taken place there recently. He's now safe and sound back in Canada, thankfully, so it's our honor to be speaking with him tonight. Mahdi, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me, James. It's my honor.
Well, it's great to talk to you because I know you had a lot of incredible experiences over there, and it's great to have you back as safe and sound in Canada, certainly. So let's start talking about some of those experiences you had. And for viewers who didn't catch our earlier interview, perhaps you could just explain what it was you were doing over there.
Well, as you know, you talked to me before I left to North Africa, before I left to Tunisia and Libya. I explained that I was part of a group of international observers and that went on a fact-finding mission to Libya. I was part of this delegation and that came from different parts of the world. I was one of the members. Along the way, before I left, I made an agreement with Pacifica Radio, specifically Flashpoints, which is the sister show of Democracy Now! I made an agreement to be their correspondent on the ground in Libya, and as far as my journalistic work is concerned, I did correspondence for them strictly. Of course, I did dispatches for Global Research as well, but my main objectives there were not to be a journalist. And since I'm speaking about journalism, I consider there's many good independent journalists, far better than me, far more professional. I consider Kevin Pina to be one of the symbols of independent journalism, yourself included as well. But going back to Kevin Pina, this is a man I highly respect, someone who helped me, gave me advice. I am indebted to several people at Pacifica Radio for the support they gave me, and I highly respect Kevin for his work in Haiti, which he did under threat from the U.S. military, and he went against the media consensus there, and he gave me a lot of good advice while I was in Libya, which I appreciate, and I want to thank him for this, and I have thanked him for this.
Well, that does sound like helpful advice, especially because that's pretty much the situation you ended up being in, as NATO obviously was bombarding Libya in general and eventually Tripoli in particular. But let's start from the time when you arrived. When did you arrive, and what was the situation like in the country at that time?
I was in Libya for over 2 months. The trip was longer than 2 months because I spent time in Italy, Tunisia, Malta, and Switzerland. So the trip was far longer than 2 months. But in Libya specifically, I was there for just over 2 months. I arrived there in July, and I left there in August. So it was a long stay I had there. The security situation in Western Libya was not bad, aside from targeted assassinations, terrorist attacks, and destabilization efforts, which were ongoing, and the Libyan government tried to keep. The Libyan government didn't want panic, and this is one of the reasons they didn't want the general population to know that there was assassination attempts and things like that. But people did know. But they tried to, they didn't want panic, and this is what any government would do, because the psychological war is a major internal threat. And the only reason that Tripoli has fallen is because of that psychological war. It was not the physical war that made Tripoli fall. It was the psychological war and the media war. It was the fear and the tensions and the trauma. A lot of people defected because of the fears that was being fueled by the media through false reports. And I remember telling flashpoints, when I was being interviewed from the station from Berkeley, California, I was telling them that the only risk here is the fear. If they give in to the fear, the government could collapse, the regime could collapse, and it has not collapsed. I want to point out they're still fighting in Tripoli. To the very moment I entered the harbor in Tripoli to leave with a group of internationals, diverse group of internationals from Ukraine, Russia, Italy, Britain, France, Algeria, and several other places, including Romania. We saw fighting in the harbor, around the harbor, and we saw fighting in Green Square. So don't think the fighting's over, and don't think that the regime in Libya has collapsed. The government's still there, and the fighting will not end for a long time. And I predict that there'll be a heavy bloodbath in Gaddafi's home city and district of Sirte. The people in Sirte are not going to give up, and they are going to probably fight to the death. And there's still loyalists fighting all over Libya, and they're not going to control the west for sure. And the south they're not going to control at all. NATO carpet bombed that place too. This is undeniable. You know, I spoke to the Cuban ambassador there about it. Spoke to fellow Canadian about what was happening there. I spoke to many Libyans there. That country was carpet bombed. NATO has carpet bombed the Libyan Arab Jamahiriya. This is undeniable, and this is what took place. The last weeks before the insurgents arrived in Tripoli, those last few days there was heavy bombing, and that's what cleared the way for them. They brought them in from the harbor. There was an amphibious assault with an insurgent invasion, and there was NATO forces with them on the ground.
Very interesting, very, very interesting indeed. So as you say, this was a long and protracted assault, and just to get the dates clear then, so you arrived around the beginning of July and left around the end of August?
I think it was around the end of July. James, off the top of my head, I have to tell you, it was in 20-something. It was late July, and I left at the end of. I was there exactly over 2 months.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, okay. So it was definitely long enough to see what was going on, and I know you were doing a lot of reporting on the ground about some of the NATO war crimes that were going on, and of course being unreported in the mainstream media in North America. Can you tell us about some of the things that you were witness to and that you heard about when you were there?
The war crimes are horrendous. They're undeniable. I wish more people would speak out about them. I wish the people even on the Transitional Council side would acknowledge them. These are fellow Libyans. These are their own people, their own brothers and sisters that are being butchered and murdered. You know, hate for one man and his family does not justify or legitimize working with foreigners to destroy one's country. You know, and I wish they would speak up about this and acknowledge the war crimes that have been going on. And let me tell you, there's good people on both sides. There's bad people on both sides. But the regime in Tripoli was victimized. It was not the aggressor. It was the victim. You know, I'm not saying it's an ideal regime. All I'm saying is it was the victim. Now, speaking about the war crimes, where do I begin? When you bomb hospitals, when you bomb civilian infrastructure, when you bomb residential neighborhoods, when you bomb clinics, when you bomb medical factories and facilities, when you bomb water facilities, when you bomb food storage sites, when you bomb a site that stores all the vaccination records of the children in Libya, when you bomb a site for physically disabled people, when you bomb preschools, when you bomb university sites, these are war crimes. They deliberately targeted the Libyan Broadcasting Corporation numerous times. This was to silence any voice. They bombed communication facilities, and they targeted Libyan journalists. And why? They said because so-called Gaddafi propaganda was a threat to civilian lives. No, you can't bomb somebody for their points of views and perspectives. This was a form of military censorship. It was a form of aggression, and journalist associations around the world, it was their responsibility to speak out. Journalists have to be protected under international law. NATO did not respect this. Let me tell you, NATO was actively helping arms go into Libya. The NATO channel itself even put a film out, a small documentary, about how a Canadian vessel, naval vessel, allowed weapons to go into Misrata. Okay, so they're letting weapons go in, and their excuse was the weapons were already there. No, the arms embargo is openly and blatantly being broken by France, Qatar, the Egyptian military junta was helping as the United States instructed them. The generals in Egypt, in Cairo, follow what the U.S. said. Hillary Clinton set all this up. Hillary Clinton was in both Tunisia and Egypt, making agreements to use those places as bases to attack Libya. Special forces were coming in from these areas. Special forces were coming from the Mediterranean coast, which borders is north of Libya, and this includes French. I spoke to people who were fighting, who were in battle, who came back and forth. Of course, I didn't see this, but I believe what I was told. I don't think when their lives are at risk and in the heat of battle that they're going to make up stories about how they fought with Al-Qaeda, how they fought with French special forces. You know, and now you hear the news reports. When I said there was French special forces on the ground in Libya, I was being mocked. But now you see reports of how there are British and French. You know, there's special forces from the Arab petro-sheikdoms of the Persian Gulf. You know, Qatar, for example, the United Arab Emirates, also the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. These people have made mobile phone videos of them in front of their embassies, you know. So there was also mercenaries and which are security contractors. It's very ironic. They demonize the Libyan government for having mercenaries when they themselves, the NATO states, bring the mercenaries in themselves. The United States is the biggest user and contractor of mercenaries in the world. They filled Iraq and Afghanistan with them in other conflict zones. They use Blackwater, you know. Them and the British, they use these contractors. You know, what is the French Foreign Legion? They're foreigners in the military. In a way, they're contractors. But how about the Burqas in Britain? You know, so these NATO states, these aggressors, brought in mercenaries in the country. Not only that, they brought people with deviant views about faith, who were fighting in a context, who believed they were fighting a righteous war, jihad, I guess, under the banner of Islam. So they were bringing Al-Qaeda, what you can loosely call Al-Qaeda, into the country. You know, this includes the